Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott MacKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, once again, welcome to Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for joining the #1 industrial-related podcast in the universe that celebrates industry professionals such as yourself. You're bold, brave, you dare greatly, you innovate, you collaborate, you solve problems each and every day. That's why we celebrate you on Industrial Talk. We are also brought to you by those wonderful people at Siemens. Siemens Smart Infrastructure and Grid Software. Go out to Siemens.com and find out more. They have their hands in pretty much everything that you can even imagine and then some. So go out to Siemens.com, find out more. You will not be disappointed. We are broadcasting from DistribuTech. We are in Dallas, Texas, and it's a massive event, massive. It's just, you have no idea. And it's a great market to be involved. So if you're in the world of utilities, transmissions, power generation, and all of the stuff that's in between, you need to be at this event. So put this on your calendar for next year if you're not here. All right, in the hot seat, Matt Burton. He is with Siemens. Let's get this cracking. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I can't complain as I fade this out. I can't. I'm so glad that you made it.
Yeah.
Did you get winded coming on over here? You did, didn't you?
A little bit. I was jogging a little late.
You just get like...
That's a good mile long or something.
Yeah,
end to end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had that lactic acid build up in your legs right there. It was like, oh, now I need a Gatorade.
Get my cardio in,
Yeah, you did. Got your steps in, definitely. Whatever that looks like. So, for the listeners out there, Matt, give us a little 411 on who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Burton, so I'm the VP of Software Sales for US and Mexico, Grid Software at Siemens. So working on everything.
Do you know Sabine?
I do know Sabine. Yeah, she's over there. Yeah.
She is over there.
Yeah.
I saw her. Ran into her.
Yeah. Oh, very good. You got to get her on this.
I already did that a couple of years. She's like, do I have to get back on it?
Yeah. She's busy. Very busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, working on everything from transmission, distribution planning, meter data management, and quite a bit of DER analytics and how do we connect all these different areas.
DER, what's that acronym?
Oh, Distributed Energy Resources.
Good.
Yeah, definitely acronym heavy in this industry.
Because the words are long and multi-syllable.
Exactly.
Gets a little exhausting. So with that said, talk to us a little bit about that grid software. Here's how I lay it out. Me being a former transmission lineman, I'm very linear in my thinking. I don't. It was always generation, transmission, substation, distribution, another substation, and then down to the end user. And from a system operator's perspective, that was pretty easy to sort of manage. Important, but a little bit easier than what we're looking at today. Give us a little background on what's going on.
Yeah, that's a very great point, and you'll be pleased to know that really everybody's thinking about how to make that less linear, a little more non-linear, right? Because, traditionally when you had the centralized generation resources, right, you have a big power plant out somewhere, big transmission lines carrying it to a city, so everything was built up for over a century, all worked great, right? Yeah. So with the DERs, the distributed energy resources, this is what a lot of folks have been talking about in the industry, but now we're starting to see the effects where with that distribution, you're starting to see much more crossover in the impacts between the centralized generation, the transmission, the distribution, where it used to be linear impacts. Now you can have power flowing from the distribution back up to the transmission. It's crazy.
And again, it's way above my pay grade. I can't. It's hard for me to. That is a technology solution, and being able to deploy the technology in such a way that makes sense. Because me as a consumer, right? I don't want my lights flickering. I want to go home and flip it on and everything's fine because I don't want to be thinking about it. That's just sort of the game. And now we're looking at it from the perspective of, well, we have to do X, Y, Z, and of course, I got a car over here, I got this distributed whatever solution over here, and I'm a system operator. Take us a little through that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most challenging part. And so you mentioned, technology is what we need to deploy to make that happen.
It has to.
Yeah, we definitely have to do that, actually, for an important reason I'll come back to. But even more than that, it's the people and the processes that have to change along with that. I think that's one of the most interesting pieces is, with all that technology we deploy,
right.
How are people using that to make those decisions and work across boundaries at these large,
Right.
organizations that traditionally haven't had to.
So you got a change management component there that is significant.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you're getting some, that's not how we used to do it, and there might be some
absolutely.
pushback associated with it. But the reality is, it is a huge change management. How do you in a dynamic environment like what we're talking about here, it's frothy out there, baby. It's amazing. With that said, how do you take companies through that change management when it's always changing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's why, as Grid Software, we do have a big consulting practice as part of what we do, right? Because we need to bring experts not only for the software integration piece and how do you actually deploy these technologies, but also the power systems expertise and the engineering knowledge that you need to leverage together. Because those are traditionally very different skill sets, and so when you bring them together, it's very powerful for enacting this change with utilities and system operators.
How do you also work in the regulatory environment? So you have the typical investor-owned utility. I've got a rate case. I'm getting a rate of return. I deploy this type of capital, and on that capital I get this. And then, of course, as a rate payer, shall I say customer, I'm not sure if I really like the fact that I have to spend more.
Yeah, no, that's one of the most important aspects, I think, of a lot of this change right now. Because, actually, to a point I was going to make a little earlier, we have to deploy a lot of this technology because there just really isn't enough financing available for a fully hardware-based solution. Like if you just wanted to build your way out of this with new transmission distribution.
No.
Everyone's rates you'd be paying $1,000 a month on your bill. And so, from a regulatory standpoint, I think a lot of regulations are pointing more towards how do we enact some of this change more at the federal level, and how do we enact some of this change across even utility boundaries, right? Because a lot of the solutions, planning, technology, software aside, are going to be interregional connections, transmission line build-outs that require more complex planning and the regulatory framework to enable that.
I see that this is a train that has left the station. It's happening, whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. There's tremendous inefficiencies that exist today in just your typical structure. Two questions. Driving inefficiency, how do we get that? Because that's important. And then two, are the regulatory agencies that nimble to be able to keep up? Because this train is happening.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so I think on driving inefficiencies out of organizations, or however we want to phrase it, I think a lot of value is going to be driven through the data management aspect of things. And that might just be a little myopic from what I'm working on these days, but a lot of the utilities we talk to, data lives in a million different places, and being able to centralize how everyone is managing that data, because right now you might have 10 teams of people that, oh hey, something changed in the field, let's all manually update this on our end. Or if you could make that change in one place and spread that across the organization, you're going to drive a lot more efficiency, and you're going to allow for those engineers and those experts that you have to focus on higher value problems and some of that kind of just rote day-to-day work.
And I appreciate that. It's not going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. But when you start talking about data centers and you're talking about these large load blocks of power consumption, it just seems like it's a good time to be a part of the power industry, but it is also a very because me as a consumer and many, it could be a manufacturer, I don't care. I need that power, and I need to have it clean, and I don't want to deal with that. And if we don't get this right, we don't have many bites at the apple to say, that's okay, sorry about that, let's do it another way, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Because the consumer will squawk.
Yeah, that is a good point. And yeah, sorry, you had mentioned on that other question, part of the speed component. So I think like NERC and FERC and ERCOT, they're all moving much more quickly than they probably have in the past with a lot of this.
Sure,
they're
it's
doing
uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, but I mean, they're doing really a fantastic job at it.
Good.
As being part of some of those discussions on how they're making those decisions, those stakeholder groups are working pretty quickly, and they have a lot of experts in the room to help do that. And also to your point there on the load growth piece, it is daunting, and that's really the big buzz right now is how do we solve for that? I think the one kind of silver lining of all that might be with that load growth does come more ability to deploy more software, more hardware, more capital to solve those problems where it won't have such a large impact on the rate base because of those new loads.
See, and I look at it this way, like these LED lights, there's multiple little lights. Mm-hmm. And I see that as sort of venturing into multiple generators that can ensure if one goes out, it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. Unlike the big monster, asset. So you have smaller ones that you can dispatch. You've got the technology. It just seems like that's where we're going, and I think that's a interesting scenario.
It really is, and actually, what's even more interesting, that it's one of my favorite topics because that is a good thesis. But then the downside is a lot of those big generators, big rotating mass. So you start getting it gets a little more engineering heavy, but the inertia of the grid.
You have to. You have to have that to stabilize that grid, that physical stability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of there's a lot of headway being made in just power conditioning devices, and also through Siemens Grid Software, some of the analytics you need to do on some of those harmonics and higher frequency analyses you need to do to keep the grid stable.
I digress. Yeah. The question I have is a utility comes to you, says, "Hey, we like what you're saying, and we want to know more, and we want to be able to partner with you and be able to start deploying a solution. We see the need, we see the growth, whatever." How quickly can you turn this stuff around?
Oh, with Siemens Grid Software particularly?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it definitely depends on the solution, but that can be relatively quick because we do have the in-house expertise to help scope that out. So, it could be something simple as here's a software license and you're off and running the next day. It can be a more complex project where we help you understand, okay, what data are you working with today, and turn it into something that is a combination of the software deployment and also the change management so that it's something the whole utility organization can get behind.
Is this, because of the conversation we're having at DistribuTech, it's pretty exciting. It's dazzling. It's a bright, shiny object, which is very cool. Are other parts of the world having a similar conversation?
That is a great question. So I'm pretty U.S.-centric, but yes. I mean, the distributed energy proliferation is happening everywhere. Also renewables, even if it's large utility scale renewables, it's still inverter-based resources, so you still have those inertia problems. So
you do.
Yeah, Europe is certainly experiencing it. I mean, Australia certainly. A lot of Asia is experiencing it. There's other regions in the world, maybe they're a little further behind, but it's only going to, the main factor is that now, Europe, Australia, United States has regulatorily helped drive some of the adoption, but now the economics have flipped such that it just makes more economic sense to even skip some steps that we took and just you're going right to solar, you're going right to wind as a better economic decision. So they're going to start facing those problems much sooner than we had to. You
mentioned that part of your service territory is Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges are they dealing with?
That's a great question. So in Mexico, Central America generally, different pockets do have a lot of renewable penetration, maybe some hydro in particular. Overall, a lot of the issues look relatively similar. It's aging infrastructure, it's how to manage and orchestrate all of these assets in just a better way. And, they're only a few years out of having that kind of distributed energy load growth and generation growth that we've experienced over the past probably 10 years or so.
I would imagine it's regional, too, in the sense that there's a lot of border type of businesses that are shaping that drive to more reliable
Yes.
power.
Yeah, you just mentioned that on the reliable power side. I mean, that's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah, especially data centers. A lot of these big loads are super sensitive. Like you talk, chip manufacturing, the data centers. Yeah, you have the slightest little fluctuation in the frequency, and it's utility. They're getting a phone call.
Yeah, and that's massive capex.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're not messing around. So with all that said, you need to put your future hat on. Where do you see it going? Based off your conversation, where do we see it going?
Oh wow. The whole industry generally.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think we're going to see a lot of this load growth. I don't know, personal opinion, if we're going to meet such high projections we've been seeing. You never know how bubbly things can be, but we're going to see significant load growth that we haven't seen in a long time. We're going to see a lot more efficiency driven through system operators and utilities are embracing a lot of this technology to make this happen. We're going to see the deployment, especially in kind of R&D space, of really interesting new hardware on power conditioning type devices. I think we're going to see more experimentation on new generation resources, maybe even like
nuke.
I don't know enough about it, but I've been asking about it on the small modular reactors. What's going to really happen there?
Yeah. I don't know. Again, way above my pay grade, but I do like it.
Yeah, I mean, they're putting a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I mean, you see some of these data center folks inking deals with nuke plants that were considering retirement, and even behind the meter type data centers paired. I think so. All signs point to a positive outcome there, and I think it's just going to be what's the magnitude of that load growth and change. Yeah,
I agree. Matt, how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, you can find me on LinkedIn, Matt Burton at Siemens, or matt.burton at siemens.com.
You were great.
God. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for finding me. Thank you for stopping at that Gatorade stand and building up your electrolytes.
Yeah, right. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. We're broadcasting from DistribuTech. We're in Dallas, Texas. And if you are in the power business or thinking about getting into the utility or transmission or any of those, you need to put this one on your calendar. It is an absolute barn burner. You get to see some great technology, and you get to meet people like Matt. That's so great. We're going to have all the contact information for Matt out on Industrial Talk, so stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
DistribuTech. If you're in the world of utilities, transmissions, substations, power, this is an event for you. It was chock full of incredible leaders like Matt Burton, Grid Software with Siemens. It's an exciting time. I have got to tell you, it's a wonderful event, and it's a market that you need to be involved in big time. It is absolutely wonderful. Reach out to Matt and find out more. There's a lot going on. It's frothy. All right, Industrial Talk is a marketing company. It is dedicated to your success. It amplifies your message and hopefully brings in more opportunities. That's what it's all about. Industrial Talk. Go out to Industrial Talk, find out more. That's what we're all about. We're going to be putting out an ebook soon, so be on the lookout. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with Matt, change the world. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.